Arrival. 12 ships park over the planet, and the entire human response hinges on one mistranslated word. In Arrival, released in 2016, Denis Villeneuve drops 12 shell-shaped craft over sites across the globe, and the world's militaries immediately start asking whether they need to shoot first. The film hands the problem to a linguist instead. Louise Banks, played by Amy Adams, is brought in to decode the written language of the heptapods, a script of circular logograms with no clear beginning or end, fitting for a seven-limbed, cephalopod-like species that doesn't experience time the way we do. The screenplay, by Eric Heiserer, adapts Ted Chiang's 1998 novella, Story of Your Life, and it builds the whole crisis on translation. When Banks finally assembles enough shared vocabulary to ask the aliens why they came, the answer comes back as, "Offer weapon." That single phrase nearly ends the world. Banks argues that the heptapods may not draw a line between weapon and tool, that the word might not exist in their minds the way it screams in ours. But a Chinese general named Shang reads it as a threat, and nation after nation starts moving toward a coordinated strike on a misunderstanding. The truth is that the weapon is the language itself. Learning it rewires the brain to perceive time non-linearly, to experience the future and the past at once. And the heptapods came to give humanity that gift because, 3,000 years from now, they're going to need us to return the favor. The fear was never in the visitors. It was in us. District 9. The aliens didn't invade Johannesburg. They got stranded over it, sick and starving, and humanity built them a slum. Neil Blomkamp's feature debut from 2009, adapted from his own 2005 short, Alive in Joburg, opens in an alternate 1982, when an alien ship stalls dead in the air over the city. When humans cut their way inside, they don't find soldiers. They find a malnourished, diseased, insectoid population with no leadership and nowhere to go. The government does what governments in this story always do, which is build a fence. The refugees get confined to an internment camp, and the humans around them coin a slur, calling them prawns, a word designed to make them less than people. The parallel isn't subtle, and Blomkamp never meant it to be. The premise comes straight out of Cape Town's District 6, a real neighborhood whose residents were forcibly removed during apartheid. The film cost $30 million, grossed over $210 million worldwide, and pulled 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. The genius is the protagonist, Vickers, played by Charlton Copley, a bureaucrat cheerfully evicting prawns, until he's exposed to alien fluid and starts transforming into one himself. Suddenly, he's on the wrong side of the fence he helped build, hunted by the corporation he used to work for, the one running experiments on the refugees. The prawns were workers and survivors, and the real predators wore lab coats. The horror of the film is how fast human beings organize cruelty around anything that looks different. The day the Earth stood still. He landed on the National Mall, said he came in peace, and a nervous soldier shot him before he finished the sentence. Robert Wise directed this one in 1951, from a screenplay adapting Harry Bates's 1940 short story, Farewell to the Master. A saucer sets down in Washington, D.C., and a humanoid named Klaatu, played by Michael Rennie, steps out announcing that he comes in peace and with goodwill. He's reaching for a small device, a gift meant for the president, when a jumpy soldier shoots and wounds him. His robot, Gort, disintegrates the soldier's weapons, but the instant Klaatu gives the order, it stands down. That restraint is the whole point. Klaatu's actual message is a warning that Earth's discovery of atomic power has made its violence a threat to other worlds, and that an interplanetary order of robots like Gort exists to keep the peace by force. His ultimatum is blunt: join them and live in peace, or face obliteration. This is the film that wrote the template, 70 years before Arrival ran the same play. The visitor's first words are an offer of peace, and humanity's first response is a bullet. E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. A botanist gets left behind on a survey trip and the most powerful nation on Earth treats a homesick gardener like a biohazard. When Steven Spielberg's film hit theaters on June 11, 1982, audiences met an alien whose entire mission was collecting plant samples. He wanders off from his group, the ship leaves without him, and he's stranded in suburban California with no way home. What he finds instead is a boy named Elliot, and the two form a telepathic bond so strong that what one feels, the other feels too. Elliot and his siblings hide him because they understand instinctively what the adults can't, that this creature is gentle. The government doesn't see it that way. A team led by an agent the kids only know as Keys hunts E.T. down, seals the house in plastic sheeting, and treats him like a specimen, though Keys himself eventually softens into something like empathy. And the thing everyone's so afraid of just wants to phone home. The film broke all-time box office records and helped define the modern blockbuster, earning $11.8 million in its opening weekend alone. The gentlest alien in film history gets treated as a threat because nobody bothered to ask what he wanted. Spielberg makes the misunderstanding generational. The kids see a friend while the adults see a danger. By the way, if you're enjoying this, I post videos like this all the time, and a subscribe would genuinely help the channel out. Thanks. Starman. Humanity mailed an open invitation to the stars, and when somebody actually showed up, the government tried to dissect him. John Carpenter directed this one in 1984, with Jeff Bridges and Karen Allen. The alien comes to Earth in direct response to the gold record bolted to the Voyager 2 probe, launched in 1977, which carried a message of peace out into the dark. So it RSVPs. It clones the body of a Wisconsin widow's late husband and asks her to drive it across the country to a rendezvous in Arizona. For its trouble, it gets hunted by an NSA chief named Fox, while a lone SETI scientist named Sherman keeps insisting the obvious, that the thing came in peace. Bridges earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor playing it. The cruel joke is that we sent the invitation, then panicked when it was answered, and the most polite guest imaginable ends up running for his life. The Abyss. Deep under the ocean, a drilling crew finds something that could drown every coastal city on Earth and chooses not to. James Cameron wrote and directed this one in 1989, with Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and Michael Biehn. A nuclear submarine sinks in the Caribbean, and a Navy SEAL team gets dropped onto a civilian oil rig crew to investigate, racing Soviet vessels to the wreck. The real story starts when a diver named Lindsay encounters a glowing presence she names a non-terrestrial intelligence, an NTI. These aren't invaders, they're deep ocean dwellers, and when they want to look at the humans, they send up an animated column of seawater that shapes itself into the divers' own faces, curious rather than hostile. The genuine threat in the film isn't alien at all. It's an unstable nuclear warhead and a SEAL whose mind is coming apart from high-pressure psychosis. In the 1992 special edition, Cameron restored roughly 30 minutes of footage, and in that extended cut, the NTIs do something staggering. Alarmed by humanity's appetite for war, they raise colossal tidal waves over every coastline on the planet, hold them suspended, and then pull them back. It's a test. They spare humanity because of a single act of self-sacrificing love, deciding that our capacity to love just barely outweighs our capacity to destroy. These are beings who could end us in an afternoon and instead grade us on whether we deserve to survive. And the misunderstanding is humanity assuming that any greater power must want us dead. Cocoon. The aliens renting the house next to a Florida retirement home weren't casing the place. They were saving their own people. Ron Howard directed this one in 1985. 10,000 years ago, peaceful aliens from the planet Antares left an outpost behind on the lost city of Atlantis, and now a small crew has come back to retrieve their cocooned comrades. Disguised as humans, they rent a house with a swimming pool and charge the water with life force to revive the cocoons for the trip home. The complication is the retirement home next door, whose elderly residents start sneaking into the pool and discover they suddenly feel decades younger. The Antarians, led by a man called Walter, turn out to be reasonable, non-aggressive, and forgiving about the trespassing. The film won Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, for Don Amici, and for Best Visual Effects. It's a rescue mission mistaken for an intrusion, and the aliens reward the humans who break into their pool with more life. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The military prepared for an invasion at Devil's Tower, and the aliens answered with a song. Steven Spielberg wrote and directed this one in 1977, with Richard Dreyfuss and Francois Truffaut. Sightings pile up worldwide, and they all pull obsessed civilians toward one spot, Devil's Tower in Wyoming, the landing site the aliens have planted in people's minds. When first contact finally happens, it isn't a battle. It's a conversation built out of tone and color, humans answering the ship's 5-note musical phrase with light and sound until the two species are essentially playing a duet. Then the mothership opens and gives people back. Long-missing abductees walk out unharmed and somehow unaged, among them the pilots of Flight 19 and sailors from the Cotopaxi. Real disappearances the film folds into its mythology. The aliens themselves are small, childlike, and curious, never once threatening. Spielberg's whole thesis is that first contact is something you talk your way through, not shoot your way through. And by making every abduction temporary, he reframes decades of alien abduction dread as one enormous misunderstanding. Enemy Mine. A human and the alien he was trained to kill crash land on the same dead world, and the enemy becomes the only family he has. Wolfgang Petersen directed this one in 1985, with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr., based on Barry Longyear's novella. Quaid plays human pilot Will Davidge, and Gossett plays a Drac alien soldier, Jariba Shigan, whom Davidge nicknames Jerry. Marooned together on an inhospitable planet, survival forces them to do the one thing the war never allowed, which is cooperate. Mutual distrust slowly gives way to a genuine friendship, deep enough that Davidge ends up raising Jariba's child as his own. The film flopped in theaters but later grew into a cult favorite. The whole interstellar war was built on the assumption that the other side was monstrous, and a few months stranded on a rock dismantles it completely, because the alien turns out to be the more loyal of the two. Contact. After decades listening to static, a scientist finally hears the aliens, and they speak to her in the voice of her dead father. Robert Zemeckis directed this one in 1997, adapting Carl Sagan's 1985 novel, with Jodie Foster as SETI scientist Ellie Arroway. Arroway picks up a signal of prime numbers beaming from the star system Vega, about 26 light-years away, and buried inside it are the blueprints for a transport that can send a single human ambassador across the galaxy. Ellie rides it through a series of wormholes and arrives on a beach that matches a drawing she made as a child of Pensacola, Florida. A figure approaches, and it's her father, long dead, except it isn't. It's an alien wearing his face. They chose something familiar to make first contact gentler on her, and they tell her this is only humanity's first small step toward joining a much larger community of spacefaring species. The aliens here are so considerate that they reshape themselves to keep from frightening their first human guest, and the only real conflict in the film comes from human bureaucracy and zealotry, never from the visitors. Monsters. Everyone calls them monsters, until the final scene, when two of them light up the dark and walk right past the humans without a glance. This was the directorial debut of Gareth Edwards in 2010, years before he made Godzilla and Rogue One. A NASA probe crashes in Mexico carrying alien life, and within a few years, giant tentacled creatures have spread across half the country, which gets quarantined as an infected zone. The human response is depressingly familiar: a massive border wall and missiles fired at anything that moves. But Edwards keeps the creature's nature deliberately ambiguous, asking whether their violence is aggression or just self-defense against the things bombing them. The answer arrives in the final scene, when two of the creatures meet in a slow, glowing bioluminescent display and completely ignore the humans standing right beside them. They were never hunting us. The title was the trap, because by the end, the only real monsters are the people walling off and bombing creatures that just wanted to find each other. Avatar. Humanity travels 4 light-years to a paradise moon and decides the natives are just an obstacle sitting on top of the ore. James Cameron wrote and directed this one in 2009. By the year 2154, Earth is strip-mined and dying. So a corporation called the Resources Development Administration sets up on Pandora, a lush moon in the Alpha Centauri system, to dig out a mineral called unobtainium. The problem is that the richest deposit sits under the home of the Na'vi, a 10-foot blue-skinned species that lives in genuine harmony with the moon's living neural network. A paraplegic Marine named Jake Sully gets to operate a Na'vi avatar body, and the longer he spends among them, the more he understands them, until he turns on the company that sent him. The RDA's answer is to bulldoze the sacred home tree and kill many of the Na'vi, including their clan chief, to clear the way for mining. In the end, the surviving humans get expelled, and Jake permanently transfers his consciousness into his Na'vi body for good. What makes this one sting is that the misunderstanding is willful. The humans understand the Na'vi perfectly well, and choose to see them as savages because the truth is inconvenient. The film flips the genre on its head, because here the aliens are at home, and the humans are the invaders. The Iron Giant. The thing that fell from the sky was built to be a weapon, and the most human choice it ever made was to refuse. Brad Bird made his feature debut with this one in 1999, setting it in 1957 at the paranoid peak of the Cold War. A giant metal alien crashes near a Maine town and befriends a boy named Hogarth. Bird pitched the whole film on a single question: what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun? The giant is an amnesiac alien war machine, and that's the tragedy of him, because whenever he's threatened, his programming snaps awake, and he remembers exactly what he was built to do, which is destroy. A paranoid government agent named Mansley convinces the military that the giant is an invading weapon, and that fear triggers a nuclear missile launch aimed at the very town the giant has come to love. So the giant makes a choice. He flies straight up into the incoming missile and sacrifices himself, whispering the name Superman, having decided that you are who you choose to be. An alien literally engineered as a weapon turns out gentler than every human hunting it, and the misunderstanding is what kills him. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.